I had just returned home after 72 hours of work without sleep. My husband's family was all there. I thought something important had happened, until I saw my luggage in the yard. "Get out of here! We don't like strong women like you. We need traditional women," my father-in-law shouted loudly, and then looked at my sister affectionately. Until the next week, they knelt at my feet and cried. I'm Liora Arden. Yeah, that Arden. The one who dragged Arden House from a sleepy little firm into the biggest name in Northmore. The one who fixed every screw-up Victor made 30 years ago so his precious reputation wouldn't crumble. The one who paid the bills, raised the kids we never had time for, and still came home to hear, a woman shouldn't be louder than her husband. I stopped dead in the doorway, one hand still on the handle, the smell of wet coat and hospital coffee clinging to me. The entire Arden family was arranged along that long mahogany table, exactly like one of those creepy old oil paintings in Victor's study. Rows of them, backs stiff, candlelight throwing shadows up the walls so their faces looked carved out of stone. Welcome to Stories of Auntie Maya. I share new life stories here every day, and I'd really appreciate it if you hit subscribe and liked my video. Drop a comment down below telling me where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. I read every single comment, and it helps me to know I'm not alone in this, that my story matters. My father-in-law, Victor, sat at the head like a king on his throne. Shoulders squared, that silver hair slicked back, eyes cold and waiting. Elias was on his right, shoulders folded in like a whipped dog, staring down at the tablecloth, tracing the embroidered A over and over with his thumb, like it could save him. My mother-in-law, Beatrice, sat rigid beside her sister-in-law, lips pressed so tight they'd gone white. The aunts, the uncles, even Cousin Derek, who only shows up when there's inheritance talk, every single one of them in their Sunday best, hands folded, waiting. And at the foot of the table, my seat, the one I picked out when we renovated, the one I always sat in so I could see the whole room, at my place sat Mira. Legs crossed, pale pink dress, that fake humble smile she wears when she wants the elders to think she's an angel. The emerald necklace already glinting at her throat like she was born to it. Victor broke the silence first, voice low and slow, like he was reading from the Bible. "Close the door, Liora. We're all here now." Elias still wouldn't look up. Mira tilted her head, soft as ever. "You must be exhausted, sweetie. Come sit." She patted the empty chair they'd shoved off to the side, like I was the visitor. I didn't move. "What the hell is this?" Victor's eyes flicked to me, then away, like I was already yesterday's trash. "Family business," he said, "and it's time you listened for once." "Liora," he says, voice flat, "the family has made a decision." Elias still wouldn't meet my eyes. My husband, the man who cried in my arms when his daddy called him useless, now sat there letting daddy speak for him again. I laughed. I actually laughed. 72 hours without sleep, I was half delirious. A decision about what? Dinner? Mira reached over and touched Elias's hand. Touched it, like it was hers to touch. That little gesture hit me harder than any punch. Victor slid a folder across the table. Thick cream paper, gold Arden crest. Looked like a wedding invitation almost. Inside, my removal as CEO. Effective immediately. Signed by Elias. My shares, 43%, everything I bled for, transferred to the Arden Family Fund. And the representative of the fund? Mira Halden. Cousin by marriage. Sweet little Mira who brought cookies to the office and always asked Victor if he needed his tea warmed. I remember my voice cracking. "Elias, look at me." He finally did. Eyes red, but not from crying. From shame he didn't have the balls to carry alone. Victor didn't even blink, just leaned back in his chair like he was delivering Sunday's sermon, and the whole room hung on every word. He folded his hands over that stupid folder and said real slow, "Mira brings a gentler energy to the company, Liora. The board's been watching. Clients, too. They're tired of aggression. They want grace. They want tradition." He let that word, tradition, drip like holy water. and half the table nodded like he'd just quoted scripture. Beatrice, my mother-in-law, actually reached over and patted Mira's hand. "A real lady knows how to soften a room," she murmured, eyes shiny with pride she never once gave me. Mira lowered her lashes, all humble. "I just want to support Elias however the family needs," she said, voice barely above a whisper, sweet enough to rot teeth. Victor gave her this tiny approving tilt of the head, then turned back to me. "A woman who knows her place restores harmony. You stopped knowing yours a long time ago." The words hit harder than any slap. I felt every single person at that table agree with him, without saying a damn thing. Elias still wouldn't look up, just kept rubbing that embroidered A like it was a worry stone. And Mira? She lifted her eyes then, met mine across the candles, and smiled like she'd already won. Harmony. That word from his mouth made me want to throw up. Then Mira did it. She reached behind her neck, slow, like she rehearsed it 1,000 times, and unclasped the Arden necklace. You know the one, heavy gold, teardrop emerald, worn by every lady of the house since 1892. She fastened it around her own throat and smiled at me, soft, apologetic. Poison. Victor actually nodded approval. It suits the new Arden woman. I lunged for the papers. "This is fraud. My signature's forged, Elias. Tell them." Security, 2 guys I'd never seen before, grabbed my arms. Victor lifted one finger and they stopped, but the message was clear. Elias finally spoke, voice barely above a whisper. You should probably pack a bag, Liora, just for a little while." Pack a bag? From the house I designed, brick by brick? The one I stayed up nights sketching while he played golf with clients? The one I paid for with every hospital, every school, every award they slapped his name on? Victor stood. "The locks will be changed tonight for the safety of the family." Mira walked over, heels clicking on my Italian tile, and leaned in so only I could hear. "I didn't take anything from you, Liora," she whispered, breath warm against my ear. "They gave it all to me." Next thing I know, I'm outside. Rain coming down in sheets. My suitcase, somebody packed it for me, even folded my damn underwear, sitting on the wet steps like trash. I turned around to scream, to beg, to break the door down, I don't know. But the big oak door, my door, slammed shut. I heard every single lock click. 4 deadbolts, like I was the threat. I stood there in the pouring rain until my clothes stuck to my skin and the porch light went off. They turned the light off on me. That night was only the beginning of a much bigger scheme. Turns out my only mistake was believing that family had even a shred of humanity. I'm going to tell you everything, every ugly, rotting detail. Just don't stop watching now, because what they did next, that's when I stopped being their doormat and started sharpening the knife. I didn't know that night was only the beginning of a much bigger scheme. Turns out my only mistake was believing that family had even a shred of humanity. The rain hit me like a slap the second that heavy oak door slammed behind me. 4 deadbolts turned, deliberate and slow. Click, 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 click. Each one sounded like a bullet sliding into the chamber aimed right at my spine. I stood there frozen for a second, waiting for Elias to yank it open again, to shout, "Wait, this is insane," to act like the man I thought I married. Nothing. Just the rain smashing down harder, like the sky wanted me gone too. My suitcase was already sitting on the top step like someone had tossed out the trash. Water pooled around the wheels, soaking the leather. I grabbed the handle and dragged it down the brick path I'd laid with my own hands 10 summers ago, past the rose beds I planted when we first moved in, past those ridiculous stone lions Victor ordered because Ardens have always had lions at the gate. They stared at me with their stupid carved faces while the rain hammered their backs. "Come on, Liora, move," I muttered to myself, voice cracking, because if I didn't say something, I was gonna scream. Water streamed off my hair, down my neck, into my mouth. Salty, metallic. Mixed with tears, I swore I wasn't crying yet. I yanked the suitcase harder, wheels squealing like they were pissed at me, too. Behind me, the porch light flicked off. Elias did that. I know he did. One last twist of the knife. Even the house didn't want to see me anymore. I made it 3 houses down, heels slipping on the wet sidewalk, before my legs just gave up. I stopped under the one street lamp that still worked on Maple Crescent, chest heaving like I'd run a marathon instead of dragging a suitcase 30 yards. Rain hammered the metal pole above me, loud enough to drown out everything except the blood in my ears. My phone started vibrating against my thigh like it was trying to crawl out of my pocket and escape too. First buzz. I fished it out with shaking fingers. Screen lit up red. Primary account, restricted access. Fraud investigation pending. Second buzz, before I could even swipe it away. Savings account, frozen. Third buzz, merciless. Corporate card, transaction declined at Shell Station 184-214 a.m. 60 seconds. That's how long it took to wipe out every dollar I'd earned, every safety net, every late-night payment I made while Elias slept. I stared at the screen until the rain blurred the words into nothing. Then this sound crawled out of me, half laugh, half choke, this ugly, broken bark that echoed off the empty street. It didn't even sound human. I clapped a hand over my mouth to shut it up, but it kept coming. No, I whispered to the phone, to the dark, to whatever God was watching this circus. No, you don't get to take that too. But the screen just went black, like it was done talking to me, like everyone else. The phone buzzed again while my hand was still shaking from that ugly laugh. One more notification slid down like it had been waiting its turn. Northmore General Hospital Board. Subject, immediate notice, temporary suspension of cooperation. I almost dropped the phone. I swiped it open with a thumb that wouldn't stop trembling. Dear Ms. Arden, in light of recent developments and ongoing concerns regarding project leadership integrity, the board has voted to suspend all cooperation with Arden House, effective immediately. Your access credentials have been revoked. Please refrain from contacting hospital staff or entering the site until further notice. We thank you for your prior contributions. Prior contributions? 72 hours of no sleep, of me on my knees in the server room rerouting load paths because Victor's original foundation specs were garbage, of me screaming at contractors at 4 a.m. so that building wouldn't kill patients the day it opened. And this is what I get. A polite little knife in the ribs, signed by 12 cowards who were kissing my ass 2 days ago. After everything I did for you, I hissed at the screen, voice raw, I saved your damn hospital. The words just sat there, black on white, prim and final. I read them again, and again, until the letters started swimming. Not from the rain this time. My eyes were burning, hot and stinging, and I realized I was crying. Full-on, ugly crying right there under the street lamp, like some broken thing. I pressed the heel of my hand into my eyes, hard enough to see stars, trying to shove the tears back in. You spineless bastards, I whispered to the empty street. You wait. You just wait. I don't even remember calling Zoe. I just remember her voice, sleepy and pissed. Get your ass over here before you drown. 20 minutes later, I was dragging that suitcase up 3 flights of her creaky walk-up, paint peeling, radiator clanking like it was dying. She took one look at me and didn't ask questions, just shoved a towel and a bottle of cheap red into my hands. I sat on her lumpy couch that smelled like old pizza and acrylic paint and opened my laptop because I couldn't not look. Front page of the Northmore Gazette online. Liora Arden, architect endangering buildings? They had a file photo of me from some gala 2 years ago, smiling like an idiot next to Elias. Underneath, quotes from sources close to Arden House, saying I'd become erratic, unstable, that the hospital project almost collapsed because of my aggressive leadership style. I read it 3 times before the words stopped making sense. I don't even remember dialing Zoe. My fingers just did it. Muscle memory from college, when everything used to fall apart at 3 a.m., and she was the only one who answered. Next thing I knew, her voice cracked through the speaker, thick with sleep and pure Zoe attitude. "Liora? It's 3:30 in the damn morning. They threw me out," I managed, teeth chattering so hard I could barely get the words out. A pause. Then, sharp, no bullshit. "Get your ass over here before you drown, you hear me? Keys are under the dead plant like always." 20 minutes later, I was wrestling that soaked suitcase up 3 flights of her ancient walk-up, stairs groaning like they were personally offended. Paint curled off the walls in long, sad strips, radiator hissing and banging like it wanted to die already. I hit the landing and Zoe yanked the door open in an old college hoodie, hair sticking up everywhere, eyes going soft the second she saw me. She didn't say a word about the mascara rivers or the way I was shaking. Just grabbed the suitcase handle out of my frozen fingers, kicked the door shut behind us, and shoved a scratchy towel at my face. "Dry off before you ruin my floor," she muttered, already digging in the fridge. Came back with a bottle of $2 Red and twisted the cap off with her teeth. "Drink, then talk. Or don't talk, whatever." I collapsed on her lumpy couch, springs poking me like they remembered every breakdown we ever had on it back in school. Smelled like old pepperoni and turpentine, same as always. My hands moved on autopilot, opened the laptop balanced on the coffee table, screen glowing too bright in the dark. Northmore Gazette homepage, banner screaming red. "Liora Arden, architect endangering buildings?" They used that photo from the hospital groundbreaking gala 2 years ago, me in the navy dress, smiling next to Elias like we were happy, like any of it was real. The article was worse. Anonymous sources close to Arden House, claiming I'd been erratic for months, screaming at contractors, making reckless changes that almost tanked the hospital project. One quote actually said my aggressive leadership style created a toxic environment and put lives at risk. Zoe leaned over my shoulder, read 2 lines, and let out a low whistle. Motherfuckers work fast, I'll give them that. I couldn't answer, just kept scrolling, rereading, like if I stared hard enough, the words would rearrange themselves into something that didn't gut me. They didn't. "Turn it off, Lee," Zoe said softer, trying to close the lid. I slapped her hand away, voice cracking. "They're saying I almost killed people, Zoe. People I saved." She let me keep reading until the screen went blurry again, and I realized I was dripping on the keyboard. Not rain anymore, just me. Fast, I couldn't sleep. Kept replaying the whole night like a bad movie. The way they moved, too smooth, too rehearsed. Victor didn't even raise his voice. Elias barely spoke. Mira just smiled, like they'd practiced this for months, years. My shares didn't transfer themselves. My signature didn't forge itself. Someone planned every second. Then I remembered. 2 weeks ago, executive meeting. I'd finally finished the transparency report on the hospital project, the one that quietly corrected 30-year-old load-bearing mistakes Victor had buried in half the buildings downtown. I'd stood up to present it. Victor's eyes had locked on mine across the table, cold and flat, and for 1 second he looked scared. Not angry, scared, like he already knew what I was about to say would end him. I told Zoe. She went quiet, then got up and started digging through a box under her bed. "People don't torch someone this fast unless there's something huge they're terrified you'll say out loud," she muttered. 3 soft knocks floated through the thin door, too polite for a drunk neighbor, too quiet for cops. 3 in the morning. Zoe and I went dead still, like the air itself stopped breathing. "Jesus," she hissed, already moving. She snatched the old Louisville Slugger she kept propped by the fridge, paint splattered across the barrel like dried blood. I was right behind her, heart hammering so loud I swear it echoed in the hallway. Zoe pressed her eye to the peephole, held it, then eased back, brow creased. Nothing. Hall's empty. She cracked the door just enough to peek, chain still on. Cold, wet air rushed in. Nobody. but something small sat square on the ratty welcome mat that said, "Go away," in faded letters. A plain black USB drive sealed inside a sandwich bag, corners tucked neat so the rain couldn't touch it. A yellow sticky note clung to the front, ink already starting to bleed, but still readable. Zoe unhooked the chain, crouched, and snatched it up fast, like it might bite. She kicked the door shut, locked it, then rubbed the plastic dry against her hoodie before holding it out to me between two fingers. "Someone said this belongs to you," she read out loud, voice low, almost reverent. She peeled the note off and stuck it to my palm. I took the drive. It weighed nothing and everything at the same time. Cold metal through thin plastic. My fingers closed around it like it might vanish. "Who the hell leaves evidence on a doorstep at 3 a.m., Zoe whispered, gripping the bat tighter. "Someone who's more scared of them than they are of getting caught," I answered, barely recognizing my own voice. I stared at that tiny black stick, thumb brushing the sticky note again and again. Someone out there just drew a line in the sand and put it in my hand. Whatever was on this thing, they risked everything to get it to me, and I was damn sure gonna find out why. Fast. I had no idea that USB contained enough to burn the entire Arden clan to ashes. And I definitely did not expect Mira wasn't just sleeping with my husband. I had no idea that USB contained enough to burn the entire Arden clan to ashes. And I definitely did not expect Mira wasn't just sleeping with my husband. Zoe threw the deadbolt, rattled the knob twice like she didn't trust it, then grabbed the wobbly kitchen table with both hands and hauled it into the center of the room. Plates crashed to the floor. A half-dead plant tipped over, but she didn't care. This was war now. She slammed her ancient Dell down so hard the legs screeched, flipped it open, and jammed the USB in like she was loading a gun. "Sit," she ordered. I dropped into the chair opposite her. The screen glowed between us, too bright for 4 a.m. She double-clicked the only folder on the drive. It opened with a soft click that sounded louder than a gunshot. First file, PDF. High-resolution scan of the share transfer agreement, 43% of Arden House. My name in bold, my signature at the bottom, that tired little loop I do when I've been up for 3 days straight, the L that slants left, the A that crosses too high. Perfect copy. Except I'd never seen this document in my life. Zoe clicked the info tab. Created date, March 14th, 3 months ago. While I was killing myself on the hospital redesign, they were already carving up my company. "Forged," I whispered, barely air. My own voice sounded like it belonged to a stranger. Zoe's jaw went tight. "They practiced your signature, Lee. That's not a rush job." She clicked again. New folder. Hundreds of screenshots. Elias and Mira. Green bubbles, blue bubbles, hearts, kisses. My stomach flipped before I even read a word. Zoe scrolled slow so I could see every one. Elias, 11:42 p.m. She's asking too many questions about the old hospital files again. Keeps pulling the original foundation plans. Mira, 11:45 p.m. Let me handle Victor. He listens when I'm sweet. Once the transfer is done, the pie is ours, baby. Elias, 11:49 p.m. I hate this. I hate lying to her face. Mira, 11:51 p.m. You hate being poor more. Keep your mouth shut and smile for Daddy like a good little heir. I made this choked sound, half laugh, half sob. Zoe reached across and squeezed my wrist so hard it hurt. "Keep reading," she said, voice like steel. "Let it burn. You're gonna need that fire." I made this strangled noise like someone had punched me in the throat and ripped the air out. My hand shot toward the laptop, ready to hurl it straight through the wall. Zoe lunged across the table and clamped both hands around my wrist so hard her nails dug in. "Stop," she snarled through clenched teeth. "I swear to God, Liora, keep going. We are just getting started. You throw that now and they win." I was shaking so bad the chair rattled under me. She didn't let go until I dropped my hand. She clicked the next file herself. Video. Timestamp from 2 weeks ago. The screen filled with the secret conference room on the 3rd floor, the one nobody uses because the AC wheezes like a dying man. Grainy footage, phone propped behind some dusty architecture awards on the bookshelf. Perfect angle. Victor stormed back and forth like a wolf locked in a cage too small, tie loose, veins standing out on his neck. Mira sat on the edge of the table, legs swinging, pink skirt riding up just enough to look innocent and calculated at the same time. Calm as poison. Victor's voice came through, tinny but clear, low and furious. She's too close to the transparency report. If that hospital opens with her fixes plastered everywhere, every inspector in the state will start pulling permits on my old buildings. Decades of work gone. Mira tilted her head, voice dripping sugar. Then we make sure the hospital never opens with her name on it, darling. Victor stopped pacing, turned to her. The board already hates her mouth. They just need a push. Mira slid off the table, walked right up to him, traced one manicured finger down his silk tie like she owned it. I can arrange a little accident on site, she murmured, lips brushing his ear. Faulty crane, loose scaffolding, something loud and tragic. Everyone will blame the hysterical woman who pushed the schedule too fast and ignored safety protocols. Victor's mouth curved into this slow, proud smile I'd never seen on him before. He cupped her chin, thumb brushing her bottom lip. My clever girl, he said, almost tender. Zoe hit pause so hard the spacebar clicked like a gunshot. The frozen frame stayed there. Victor, smiling down at Mira like she was the best investment he ever made. My whole body went ice cold, then burning hot. They weren't just stealing my company. They were ready to kill me for it. I felt the floor tilt. Zoe paused the video, grabbed both my shoulders. Breathe, Lee. They're monsters, but they're sloppy monsters. This is evidence. Evidence. The word rattled around my skull. I wasn't going crazy. I wasn't unstable. I was the only thing standing between them and a body count. I clicked the next file myself because my hands needed something to do before I screamed. Another video. Same shaky hidden camera quality, but the room was different. Dimly lit, heavy curtains, leather couch I recognized instantly. Victor's private apartment above the old downtown office. The one he swore was just for late-night meetings. The door creaked open on screen. Mira stepped in wearing nothing but one of Victor's white dress shirts, sleeves rolled to her elbows, hem brushing mid-thigh. Her hair was messy in that way that takes an hour to perfect. She laughed at something off camera, low and private, the laugh I'd heard her use on Elias 100 times. Then Victor walked into frame. No tie, top buttons undone, sleeves shoved up his forearms like a man half his age. He looked loose, hungry, nothing like the stone-faced patriarch who'd just read my death sentence at the dining table. He didn't say a word, just hooked an arm around her waist and yanked her against him. She went willingly, head falling back, exposing her throat. He bent and kissed her there, slow, deliberate, teeth grazing skin. His hand slid up into her hair, fingers twisting tight, holding her exactly where he wanted her. He murmured something against her neck, too low for the mic to catch, but whatever it was made her smile like a cat getting cream. Zoe's voice cracked the silence in the studio. Well, shit. I couldn't breathe. My stomach flipped, acid climbing my throat. Not just Elias, his father, too. The man who called me daughter at Thanksgiving while he was screwing the same woman my husband was screwing. They weren't fighting over Mira. They were sharing her, passing her back and forth like a trophy while they planned how to bury me. I pressed a fist to my mouth hard enough to taste blood. She's not the gentle little cousin, I rasped. She's his trained attack dog in lace panties. Zoe didn't answer. She didn't have to. The screen said everything. I shoved the laptop so hard it skidded across the table and almost launched off the edge. Zoe caught it just in time, but I was already on my feet, palms flat on the wood, shaking like I was about to come apart. I was a pawn, I spat, voice raw, rage burning hotter than any tears now. A loud, useful, stupid pawn they kept around to fix their messes and sign the checks. The second I got close to telling the truth about Victor's crumbling empire, I became a problem to disappear. Zoe closed the lid, slow, careful, like the machine itself was bruised. She looked up at me, eyes blazing. They planned to discard you the second you stopped being convenient, Lee. And from what we just heard, maybe worse than discard. They were ready to drop a crane on your head and call it an accident. I couldn't sit. I paced the 3 steps the tiny studio allowed, fists clenched so tight my nails cut crescents into my palms. The frozen frame was still burned behind my eyelids. Victor's hand twisted in Mira's hair, both of them smiling like they'd already buried me. Then the laptop chirped. The video wasn't done. One more clip auto-started. Soft light. Same apartment, maybe an hour later. Victor lounged on the leather couch, shirt half open. Mira curled in his lap like she belonged there, knees tucked, head on his chest. He stroked her hair, slow, possessive, over and over, the way you calm a prize horse after a race. His voice came through low, almost tender, the same voice that once told me I was part of the family now. Once she's gone, he murmured, fingers tightening in her hair, you'll finally take your place, the real Arden woman, the one who knows how to keep things intact. Mira laughed, soft and satisfied, nails tracing lazy circles on his chest. Poor Liora, she sighed, fake pity dripping from every syllable. She really thought family meant something, thought love and blood would protect her. She lifted her head, kissed the corner of his mouth, and smiled straight into the camera she didn't know was there. She never understood this family runs on power, not sentiment. The screen went black. I sat there frozen, the sound of my own heartbeat drowning everything else. They didn't just want me out. They wanted me destroyed. And that was the exact moment something inside me snapped awake. The screen was still glowing, with Victor's hand twisted in Mira's hair, when my finger went berserk. Click, click, click. Next, next, next. Because if I stopped, I was going to scream loud enough to wake the dead. Another folder opened. New file. Higher quality, almost HD. Same apartment, different night. The camera had to be in the smoke detector. The angle stared straight down like God himself was filming their sin. Victor lounged back on the leather couch, legs wide, shirt completely unbuttoned, chest hair silver in the low light. Mira climbed onto him slow, dress already sliding off her shoulders, pooling around her waist like spilled cream. She straddled him, knees sinking deep into the cushions, and leaned down until her hair curtained both their faces. Then she kissed him. Not some quick, stolen peck, a real kiss, open-mouthed, wet, starving. Her hands in his hair, his hands gripping her hips hard enough to bruise. She pulled back just enough to breathe his name against his lips. Victor. Slow, filthy, possessive, like Elias had never existed. Zoe slapped a hand over her mouth and made this gagging sound. I'm actually going to be sick, she muttered, voice muffled behind her fingers. That's your father-in-law, Lee. I couldn't answer. My eyes were glued to the screen, throat on fire. The woman who'd smiled at me across the dinner table, who'd asked me if I needed tea while I was dying on that hospital project, was now grinding on Victor Arden like he was the only man on earth. The emerald necklace, my necklace, glinted between her breasts every time she moved. Victor growled something I couldn't hear and flipped her underneath him in one smooth move. She laughed, delighted, legs wrapping around his waist. Zoe turned away, cursing under her breath. Turn it off. I can't. I didn't. I watched every second because I needed to feel this burn, needed to remember exactly who they were when they sat at that table and stripped me of everything. Because while I was pulling all-nighters saving lives, they were in that apartment screwing each other and laughing about how easy it would be to make me disappear. I slammed the space bar. The frame froze on Mira's face, tilted back in pleasure, Victor's mouth on her throat. I wanted to claw my own eyes out. More, I rasped. There has to be more. Zoe's hands were trembling so bad the trackpad kept jumping, but she finally landed on a folder labeled M. Coco. She clicked it open, and a chat window exploded across the screen. Thousands of messages going back 2 years. Pink bubbles, purple bubbles, heart emojis, champagne glasses. I grabbed the mouse from her and scrolled like a woman possessed, lines flying past too fast to read until one block slammed into me like a fist. Mira, 3 months ago, 2:17 a.m. He promised me the ladies' position the night I finally let him have me on the conference table after everyone left. Said I earned it. Said Elias is just the public face, pretty and harmless. I'm the one who'll wear the emerald for real from now on. Told me to be patient, and the crown is mine. I kept scrolling, breath stuck somewhere under my ribs. 2 weeks later, the night I was sleeping at the hospital site because the pour schedule was behind. Victor says once Liora's out of the picture, I sit at the head table forever. I just have to keep Elias happy in bed so he stays quiet and doesn't grow a sudden spine. Easy. He cries after he finishes anyway. My lungs forgot how to work. The room went sideways. I could actually hear my own heartbeat in my ears. Loud, wrong, animal. Zoe leaned in so close her hair brushed my cheek. She read the same lines and let out this slow, stunned whisper. Jesus Christ, Lee. She's been playing them both like fiddles, father and son. She's the conductor, and they're just the instruments. I stared at the screen until the words burned white. She didn't seduce my husband, I said, voice flat and hollow. She seduced the whole damn kingdom, and I was the only one too busy holding the walls up to notice the termites. I lunged for my bag like it was the last lifeboat, fingers ripping the zipper. My old battered external drive tumbled out, the one I'd snatched in those 5 pathetic minutes they gave me to pack. I jammed the cable in so hard the port squeaked. Open my backups, I barked at Zoe. Every project folder I ever hid. She didn't ask why. She just dragged the windows side by side, USB files on the left, my secret archive on the right. I started matching numbers, dates, foundation drawings, the way I used to do at 2 a.m. when nobody was watching. 20 minutes. 20 minutes of frantic, clicking, dragging, dropping, lining up Victor's old signatures with the new fixes I'd buried in later budgets. My pulse was a drumline in my throat. Then the pattern slammed into place. 5 buildings. All Victor's name in thick black ink from 25, 30 years ago. All stamped approved, even though the rebar was spaced like pickup sticks. The concrete mix was basically sand and prayers. The load calculations were pure fairy tale. 5 downtown towers full of offices, apartments, daycares. Thousands of people walking under death sentences every single day. I sat back so hard, the chair rolled into the wall. Lee? Zoe whispered. I fixed them, I said, voice cracking. 8 years. Every new project I took, I slipped the retrofits in. New shear walls, carbon wrapping, stronger footings, whatever it took. I hid the costs and change orders and called them upgrades. I thought I was protecting the family name, protecting Elias, protecting Victor's precious legacy. I laughed, this ugly, broken sound. I was protecting strangers' lives while those strangers' husbands and fathers planned my funeral. Zoe stared at the screen, at the red circles I'd just drawn around every lie. If your transparency report on the hospital had gone public with your name on it, she said slowly, every inspector in the state would have opened those 5 buildings and found Victor's signature on every crack. Exactly, I said. I wasn't a threat because I'm a loud woman. I was a threat because I'm the only one who knew exactly where the bodies were buried, because I was the idiot keeping the coffins closed with my own bare hands. Zoe's eyes locked on the same 5 red-circled building names at the exact second I did. Her face went white under the laptop glow. Holy hell, Lee, she breathed, voice barely above a whisper. If that hospital transparency report had gone live with your name on every fix, every inspector from here to the Capitol would have ripped those 5 towers open like tin cans. They'd find Victor's signature on every single lie. That's why, I said, and my voice came out flat, ice cold, deadly calm for the first time since the door slammed behind me. That's why they needed me erased yesterday. Not because I'm too loud, not because I'm too strong, because I'm the only person alive who knew exactly where the bodies were buried, because I was the idiot holding the dirt over the graves with my own hands. I stared at the list until the names blurred. Victor, Elias, Mira, Beatrice. Every aunt and uncle who'd nodded at that table like sheep. They didn't just steal my company, my house, my marriage. They smiled while they planned to let buildings collapse rather than let me speak. Zoe's hand hovered over the trackpad. There's one more file, she said, quieter now. I clicked it myself. Email. Old server cache. From Victor's private account to Mira's. 6 months ago. Subject line, empty. Body. Elias is just a mask, darling. Pretty face for the cameras. Warm body for the society pages. Someone to sign the Christmas cards. You and I are the true Arden. Blood remembers power. Once the loud one is silenced, the empire is ours alone. I love you. V. The room actually spun. Zoe slapped both palms on the table to keep from falling out of her chair. Silenced, she repeated, the word tasting like poison. He didn't mean fired, Lee. He meant silenced. I stared at those 4 words, I love you, V, until they burned holes in my soul. Every single one of them knew. Every single one of them chose murder over truth. I stared at those words until they stopped making sense and started making perfect, horrifying sense. They never even saw me as family. I was just the last loose beam they had to pull before the whole house came down on their terms. But beams can be weapons, too. I was still frozen, staring at Victor's email glowing poison green on the screen. Elias is just a mask. You and I are the true Arden. When Zoe's phone started dancing across the table like it had been possessed. Unknown number flashing red. My stomach dropped straight through the floor. Don't, I snapped, lunging for it. Too late. Zoe already hit accept and slapped it on speaker, her voice pure ice. Who the hell is this? A man's voice came through, low, careful, like he was talking through a closed door. Zoe Maris? My name is Noah Arden. I know Liora's with you. I need to talk to her. Tonight. It has to be tonight. The name hit me like a slap. Arden. Another damn Arden crawling out of the woodwork. I ripped the phone out of Zoe's hand so hard the case cracked. How did you find us? I hissed. Every muscle locked so tight my jaw ached. A short pause. Then, quieter, almost tired. Same way someone slid that USB under your door. There are still a couple of us who can read the writing on the wall. I'm parked outside your building, black sedan, lights off, engine running. You've got 5 minutes to come down, or I'm gone, and you never hear from me again. Zoe and I stared at each other across the table, the email still burning between us like a live wire. Another Arden. But this one sounded like he was already running for his life. Zoe was already grabbing her bat from beside the fridge, the one with the chipped red paint and the word justice she'd sharpied on the barrel back in college. I yanked my soaked coat off the chair, heart hammering so loud I barely heard the radiator clank. We slipped out the back stairs like thieves, no lights, no talking, just our shoes whispering on cracked linoleum. The alley stank of wet garbage and cold metal. Half a block down, a black sedan idled under the broken street lamp, exhaust curling like cigarette smoke. Rear door cracked open 6 inches, waiting. I slid in first, knees hitting the leather seat hard. Zoe piled in right behind me, slammed the door, and laid the bat across her lap like a loaded shotgun, barrel pointed straight at the driver's head. Noah Arden turned just enough for the dashboard light to catch his face. 30 maybe, lean, cheekbones sharp, eyes the same storm cloud gray as Victor's, but softer, bruised, like he hadn't slept since the lake house fire 6 years ago. Both hands stayed high on the steering wheel, fingers spread, no sudden moves. "I'm not here to threaten you," he said before I could get a word out, voice low, steady, exhausted. "I'm here because Mira tried to burn me the same way she's burning you." I laughed. Short, ugly, bitter enough to taste. That's what every Arden says right before the knife comes out. He flinched like I'd slapped him, but he didn't argue. Just reached slow to the passenger seat, grabbed a thick manila folder, and dropped it in my lap. Heavy. Real. 6 years ago, he said, staring straight ahead now, knuckles white on the wheel. I walked in on them at the lake house, Victor and Mira. I was 24, stupid, thought family loyalty meant something, thought I could confront him, make him stop. Mira had her phone out before I finished my sentence, took pictures, told me if I ever breathed a word, she'd scream I assaulted her, send the photos to the aunts, the board, the cops, whoever would ruin me fastest. Victor didn't even get out of bed, just smiled and said, "Blood keeps quiet, Noah, or blood disappears." His voice cracked on the last word. Barely, but I heard it. Zoe's bat didn't move an inch. My fingers dug into the folder like it might bite. Another Arden. Same blood. Different cage. Zoe let out this disgusted growl low in her throat, like she was going to spit on the floor mat. I flipped open the folder with shaking fingers. Photos. Grainy, phone shots, but clear enough to make my stomach flip. Victor half undressed, Mira on top of him, both of them laughing at something. Timestamp, 6 years ago, the night Noah just described. Another photo, Victor's hand on her throat, possessive. Another, Mira looking straight at the camera like she knew someone would see it one day. I kept my mouth shut, Noah said, voice flat, like he'd rehearsed this 1,000 times in the mirror. Swallowed it for 6 damn years. Watched Victor rot the company from the inside out. Watched Elias turn into a spineless lapdog who'd lick any boot for a pat on the head. Then I watched them start planning your accident, the crane, the scaffolding, whatever would shut you up fastest. That was the line for me. He turned fully in the seat now, eyes locking on mine in the dim light. No performance, no pleading, just raw exhaustion. "I have Report X," he said. The original the state inspectors filed 12 years ago before Victor paid $500,000 to make it disappear. Every collapsed core sample, every forged inspection stamp, every building that should have been red-tagged and condemned. The real copies, not scans, originals. My pulse slammed so hard against my ribs I could hear it. "Why now?" I asked, voice cracking. "Why the hell should I believe in Arden after everything?" "Because I'm tired of being ashamed every time someone says my last name," he answered. Simple, brutal. "And because if those buildings come down because I stayed quiet, real people die. Kids in schools, nurses, families, not just reputations, people." Zoe leaned forward, bat still across her knees, voice pure venom. "And how do we know this isn't another pretty trap? You show up with candy right after we see the monster's teeth?" Noah didn't flinch, just looked straight at her, then at me. "You don't know," he said. "You have zero reason to trust me. But I'm the one sitting in this car with you two while Victor's security drives past every hour. If he finds out I'm here, I vanish. Simple as that. Your call." I stared at the folder in my lap like it was radioactive. The corner of an official state seal peeked out, red wax cracked but still screaming authority. Then I looked at Noah. Really looked. The gray eyes were Victor's, but ringed with black like he hadn't slept in weeks, maybe years. Cheeks hollow, jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscle jumping. Every Arden I'd ever met had smiled while sliding the knife in. Victor, Elias, even sweet old Aunt Beatrice, who'd patted my hand at weddings and then voted to throw me out. Blood was poison. Trust was suicide. That was the only truth I had left. But the folder weighed a ton. Real paper, real ink, real crimes. And it was burning a hole straight through my legs. Noah didn't wait for me to decide. He just reached to the floorboard, lifted a sleek black briefcase, and set it on the seat between us, like he was laying down a loaded gun. The latches snapped open with 2 sharp metallic clicks that echoed in the quiet car. Inside, thick stacks of documents bound with rubber bands, 3 flash drives in neat little sleeves, and a leather-bound ledger with handwritten dates and dollar amounts that made my stomach drop to the floorboards. 6 figures, 7 figures, initials I recognized next to every line. He didn't plead, didn't sweet talk, just looked straight at me, shoulders square, voice steady as poured concrete. "If you want to bring down the entire family," he said, "this is the weapon." Zoe's bat shifted an inch on her knees. My fingers closed around the edge of the briefcase like it might vanish. I didn't trust him. I didn't have to. The evidence was already in my hands, and for the first time since that door slammed behind me, I felt the ground shift under my feet in my favor. Noah shut the briefcase with 2 soft clicks that sounded exactly like a coffin lid dropping into place. "If you want to bring down the entire family," he said, voice flat and hard as poured steel, "this is the weapon." I couldn't speak. My throat was full of smoke and fury. I just stared at that sleek black case sitting on the seat between us, like it weighed 1,000 pounds of guilt and graves. Then I nodded once, sharp, final. Zoe snatched the handle before my fingers even moved. "Let's go," she barked. We spilled out of the car, Noah right on our heels, head swiveling, checking every shadow in the alley like Victor's ghosts were already reaching for his throat. 30 seconds later, we were back in the studio, door locked, chain on, deadbolt thrown. Zoe kicked the coffee table aside, shoved the sagging couch against the wall with her hip, and we turned the tiny kitchen table into War Room Central. Papers, laptops, cables, everywhere. Noah didn't waste time. He flipped the latches again and spread Report X across the scarred wood like a coroner laying out a body. 12 projects, 12 death sentences written in Victor's own hand. Red ink bleeding across every page, circled numbers, failed core samples that crumbled like stale cookies in the lab photos. Rebar counts half what the code demanded. Load calculations that were outright lies. I dragged one page closer, fingers shaking. "Jesus, Noah, this is the Grand Pavilion," I whispered. "They're putting 2,000 people in there next week." He met my eyes, no blinking. And Victor signed every single page like he was proud of it. I flipped pages like they were on fire and landed on the worst one. Northmore Grand Pavilion, the crown jewel they were dressing up for the 5-generation ceremony next week. My throat closed so hard I almost gagged. "This place is supposed to hold 2,000 people, I whispered, voice cracking. One good bass drop from the string quartet, one loud cheer when Victor raises his glass, and the whole roof pancakes. 2,000 bodies under rubble. Noah's mouth pulled into a thin, bloodless line. "Keep reading," he said, low and grim. I yanked open the next folder. Bank transfers, hundreds of them. A slush fund labeled Consulting Retention, nice and innocent. Money sliding out of the family fund into Cayman accounts, then bouncing right back as inspection bonuses. Every single date lined up perfect with a building that should have been red-tagged and shut down years ago. Someone's palm got greased, someone else signed the fake report, and Victor walked away, smiling like a saint. Zoe leaned over my shoulder and let out a slow, disgusted whistle. He didn't just buy a few inspectors. He bought the whole damn department. Noah reached into the briefcase again and pulled out a leather-bound ledger, edges worn soft. He flipped it open, and there it was, Mira's neat, perfect cursive in the margins, little hearts over the eyes, like she was writing love notes instead of death warrants. "She's his trident," Noah said, voice raw with 6 years of swallowed rage. Victor points, Mira stabs. She's the one who meets the inspectors in hotel bars, pours them whiskey, hands them envelopes. She's the one who smiles at the contractors and whispers what'll happen to their kids' schools if they talk. She does the dirty work, while Elias just signs whatever she slides across the breakfast table and pretends he doesn't smell the blood on the ink. I found the proof 2 pages later. Elias's initials next to a transfer for $200,000, the same week the pavilion got its final occupancy permit. He knew. My husband knew those columns were lies, and he still cashed the check. Noah watched my face. "He's terrified of being poor again," he said quietly. Victor raised him to believe poverty is worse than death. So he closes his eyes and lets Mira and Victor do whatever they want as long as the money keeps coming. I closed the ledger. The sound cracked like a gunshot in the tiny room. "Okay," I said, and my voice shook, but it shook with certainty now, not fear. "Here's the plan. We take Report X, the slush fund ledger, the videos, every filthy screenshot. We make it airtight. One clean package to the State Building Authority, one to the biggest paper in the capital, one to every TV station that still has a pulse. We drop it all the night of the 5 generations ceremony. 2,000 witnesses, cameras rolling, maximum crowd, maximum shame." Noah gave one slow, decisive nod. "I can still get us in during tech rehearsal. Badge still works. We load the files straight into the main presentation system. When Victor raises his glass to toast his own greatness, the screen does the talking for us." Zoe was already scrolling contacts, thumbs flying. "I've got a reporter at Channel 9 who owes me her firstborn, and a deputy inspector Victor ruined 10 years ago. They'll bite so hard their teeth will bleed." For the first time since that oak door slammed behind me, something hotter than rage lit up my chest. Momentum. Real, unstoppable momentum. Noah's eyes darkened. He leaned in, voice low. "One wrong step, Liora. One leak too early, and they countersue for defamation, slander, destroying the sacred family name. They'll drag us through court for years until we're broke, broken, and begging. Victor's buried people for less." I met his stare, didn't blink. "Then we don't make a wrong step." We worked straight through the night, printer screaming, scanner groaning, Zoe cursing every time the ancient Wi-Fi dropped. Copies, scans, encrypted drives, envelopes labeled in black marker. Every piece of the bomb neat and lethal. I was licking the last envelope shut, tongue tasting glue and revenge, when my phone lit up like a warning flare. Unknown number, one line glowing in the dark. "Stop before you disappear like the others." The screen went black again. Zoe froze mid-motion. Noah's hand shot to his keys, eyes already on the door. I stared at the dead phone and felt my mouth curve into the first real smile I'd worn in days. Let them come. I wasn't the woman they threw out in the rain anymore. I was the storm, coming back for them. The message, "Stop before you disappear like the others," was still burning behind my eyes when the second blow came. Faster, meaner. Noah had been twitchy all morning, pacing between the window and the door. He froze at the blinds, fingers parting the slats just enough to see. "Same gray SUV," he muttered, voice low. "Third loop in 20 minutes. Tinted windows, no plates I can read. They're on us." Zoe yanked the curtain shut so hard the rod rattled. "Victor's dog," she spat. "Didn't even wait for breakfast." I opened my mouth to answer, but my phone detonated. Notifications stacked so fast the screen blurred. Every gossip site, every local news app, every Northmore Facebook group I'd ever been forced to join. Liora Arden's ex breaks silence. She was unstable for years. I had to protect myself. I clicked before my brain caught up. There he was, Elias. My Elias, sitting on the cream couch I picked out in front of the bookshelves I built, wearing the same sad puppy face he used on his mother when he wanted a new car. Red-rimmed eyes, voice soft and trembling just enough to sound honest. "I didn't want to do this," he told the camera, dabbing at a dry cheek. "But people deserve the truth. Liora stopped sleeping months ago. She'd scream at staff for hours, threaten to burn the whole company down if anyone questioned her designs. I begged her to get help. She accused me of sabotage. I had to protect the family, protect the employees, protect Northmore." The video was already at 200,000 views. I scrolled. Poor Elias, so patient. She always seemed off. Classic, jealous woman lashing out. Hope he gets full custody of the dog. My thumb went numb. My stomach hit the floor and kept falling. Zoe grabbed the phone from my hand before I crushed it. That spineless piece of... "He's on my couch," I whispered, like that was the worst part. "He's crying on my couch while he calls me crazy." Noah didn't say anything, just watched the window again, jaw tight. They weren't just fighting back. They were rewriting me into the villain before I could even open my mouth. Then the official Arden House statement dropped like a guillotine. My phone buzzed again, calmer this time, almost polite. Corporate letterhead, Arden House crest, perfect sans serif font. Following recent concerns regarding former CEO Liora Arden's professional conduct and mental well-being, the board has initiated a full internal review. Arden House remains fully committed to the safety of our projects and the Northmore community. Translation: she's unhinged. Disregard anything she says. We're the good guys. Within an hour, my entire career was ashes. Contractors I'd known for a decade stopped answering. Old clients blocked my number without a word. One text slipped through from Sarah, my assistant for 6 years. "I'm so sorry, Liora. I have kids. I can't." I stood in the middle of Zoe's cramped studio, phone sliding from my numb fingers and clattering on the floor. The walls pressed in, paint peeling like old skin. 10 years of late nights, every award I'd hung in that office, every building I'd poured my soul into, gone. Erased in one perfectly worded press release. They didn't just want me silent. They wanted me insane. A cautionary tale whispered at dinner parties. Poor Liora, brilliant but unstable. Thank God the family stepped in. Noah started saying something about damage control. Zoe was cursing loud enough to peel paint, pacing, ready to punch through drywall. I heard none of it. The room blurred. I was back on that rainy porch, suitcase soaked at my feet, 4 deadbolts clicking like gunshots behind me. I was nothing again. My knees buckled. I dropped right there on the dirty floor and clawed through my bag until my fingers closed around the very first sketchbook I ever owned. Cheap spiral, cover half torn off, pages yellowed and curled like old leaves. I hadn't opened it in 15 years. Hands shaking so hard the rings rattled, I flipped it open. There it was, my first real design, a tiny community center for a women's shelter. Crooked lines, too many windows, pure heart. On the title page, 16-year-old me had scrawled in purple marker that was still bright, "Home is the safest place a human being can be. I'm going to build that." I traced the words with a trembling finger and felt something inside me crack wide open. They could take my company, my house, my name. They could not take this. I wasn't done building. I traced the words with my finger and something cracked open in my chest. Not despair, fury. Clean, white-hot fury. I flipped pages until I found the old pavilion file I tucked in the back years ago. Victor's original plans versus my secret retrofit notes. My pen had circled one column in red again and again. I grabbed Noah's laptop, pulled up the full structural report, cross-referenced. My breath stopped. The celebration hall, the one they were decorating right now with crystal chandeliers and 5 generations of Arden portraits, was the worst of the 12. The single most compromised building Victor ever signed off on. The central roof truss sat on a transfer beam that had been undersized from day one. My fix had been scheduled for Phase 3 of renovations. Phase 3 that Victor canceled to save money. I turned the screen so Noah and Zoe could see the stress diagram glowing red. "This isn't just dangerous," I said. And for the first time all morning, my voice didn't shake, didn't crack, didn't beg. It came out flat, cold, certain. This building is a loaded gun with 2,000 people jammed inside the barrel. One strong vibration, one loud cheer when Victor takes the stage, one bass line from the string quartet, one collective stomp when they give him his standing ovation, and the entire roof truss snaps along the exact fracture line he signed off on 30 years ago. 2,000 people gone, crushed under the crystal chandeliers he picked out himself. I tapped the stress diagram, glowing blood red on the screen, the numbers screaming failure in every direction. Victor's big moment, I whispered, almost laughing. His 5 generations of Arden builders' crowning achievement could literally bury every single one of them the second the crowd gets excited. Zoe's eyes went huge. Noah's face drained of what little color he had left. I leaned closer, voice dropping to a growl. They want to call me crazy? Fine. Let them stand under the lie they built and see how stable it really is. Zoe's eyes went wide. Noah went pale. I leaned over the plans, tracing the fracture line with my finger. They want to bury the truth, I whispered. Fine. We'll let the truth bury them. The clock was ticking. The ceremony was 6 days away. Victor's dogs were circling. Every screen in Northmore was calling me crazy. The celebration hall could collapse at any time if subject to strong vibrations. Those 12 words were burned into my skull, pulsing with every heartbeat as Noah and I ghosted through the service corridor at 4 a.m, 2 days before the big night. The hallway stank of fresh paint trying to cover 30 years of rot and lies. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like dying insects. Noah pressed his badge to the reader. The lock blinked green with a soft, traitorous click. We were inside the AV booth before the lone night guard even finished stirring sugar into his coffee. I had the drive clenched between my teeth, metallic taste on my tongue, while Noah pried open the server rack and jacked straight into the main presentation system. My hands didn't shake anymore. They were steady as poured steel. "Loop is ready," he whispered, voice barely louder than the hum of the cooling fans. 43 seconds. Slides, videos, documents, all timed to the millisecond. Once the sequence triggers, the only way to kill it is to cut power to the entire hall. That takes 2 men and a key card Victor keeps on him. I pulled the drive from my mouth, plugged it in, and watched the upload bar climb. Forged signatures. Victor and Mira tangled in sheets. The slush fund ledger with Mira's little hearts over the eyes. Report X in full color. Every frame labeled, dated, crystal goddamn clear. Press packets are already hidden in the gallery, I said, voice low. Zoe seated the reporters hours ago. The second Victor steps on stage, the inspectors get hand-delivered copies. No leaks, no early warnings. Noah locked the cabinet, wiped the keyboard with the sleeve of his hoodie until it gleamed innocent again. He turned to me, eyes hard in the blue glow of the monitors. "1 shot," he said, gripping my wrist for half a second. 1. We're off by 30 seconds and security yanks the feed. We're off by 5 and Victor has time to spin it. This has to be perfect. I met his stare and felt the old fear try to crawl up my throat. I swallowed it whole. "Then we make it perfect," I answered. We slipped back out the way we came, the lock clicking shut behind us like a starting gun. We left the AV booth exactly the way we came. Silent ghosts sliding through the veins of our own building, footsteps swallowed by 30 years of secrets. The night of the ceremony, Northmore showed up dripping money. Diamonds flashing under chandeliers, tuxedos pressed sharp enough to cut glass. I watched from the service hallway, half hidden behind a velvet curtain, breath fogging in the cold air conditioning. Mira moved through the crowd like liquid silk, poured into that backless white gown that clung to every curve she'd calculated to perfection. The Arden emerald, my emerald, the one I wore when I thought I belonged, blazed at her throat like a green supernova, catching every chandelier beam and screaming ownership to anyone who looked. She laughed at some councilman's joke. High, crystal, perfect, the sound floating over champagne flutes like she'd rehearsed it in a mirror. Then she laid one manicured hand on Elias's arm, soft, possessive, and tilted her cheek so Victor could brush his lips across it for the cameras. The photographers ate it up. Flash, flash, flash. Queen of the night, confident, untouchable, already wearing the crown inside her head. Elias hovered half a step behind her, shoulders back, chest puffed like a peacock who'd never seen a mirror. He leaned into a knot of ancient board members, the ones who still polished Victor's boots with their tongues, and bragged just loud enough for nearby ears. "Finally putting the family back on solid footing," he said, voice thick with fake gravitas. "Sometimes a man has to step up and make the hard choices, even when it breaks his heart. They nodded like he'd just invented concrete, one old fool actually patting his shoulder. "Good boy, Elias. Your father must be proud." Elias soaked it in like he'd ever swung a hammer in his life. Victor stood at the grand entrance like a king greeting pilgrims. Silver hair perfect, tuxedo cut sharp enough to draw blood, smile wide and smug as a cat licking cream off its whiskers. Every camera flashed for him. Every hand reached out to grasp the hand of Northmore's living legend. "Victor, you built this town," someone gushed. He chuckled, deep and warm, eyes shining with the certainty that tonight the crown would finally be placed on his head in front of the whole kingdom. I watched from the shadows and felt the rage settle into something cold, surgical. Perfect. They were all so busy bowing to each other, they never noticed the floor was already cracking beneath their feet. I stood in the shadows, black dress blending with the dark, hair twisted tight, press badge Zoe forged hanging cold against my chest. Noah was already locked in the control booth. Zoe waited in the wings, envelopes clutched like grenades. My heart hammered so hard I felt it in my teeth. One shot. One. The house lights dimmed for the welcome video. Polite applause rippled. Victor strode onto the stage, arms wide, drinking it in. Mira took her place to his right, radiant, hand resting lightly on the podium like it was already hers. Elias to his left, trying to look tall. I slipped into the press row, slid the last thick envelope across to the Channel 9 reporter who still owed Zoe her life. She met my eyes for half a second and gave the tiniest nod. Victor's voice boomed through the hall, rich with fake humility. 5 generations of Arden builders, and tonight we celebrate. Every light in the hall suddenly died. Pitch black. A collective gasp sucked the air from 2,000 lungs. Then the massive LED wall behind the stage flared to blinding life. And the celebration began. The lights in the hall suddenly went out. Total, swallowing black. 2,000 people froze mid-breath. For one heartbeat, the only sound was the soft clink of ice in abandoned glasses. Then the celebration began. Victor was mid-toast, champagne flute raised high, that smug, king-of-the-world smile still glued to his face. "Ladies and gentlemen, to 5 generations of Arden excellence." His voice echoed alone in the dark for half a second. Then the massive LED wall behind the stage exploded into blinding white light, brighter than noon. First frame, grainy, unmistakable. Victor's private apartment above the old downtown office. Victor and Mira, naked, limbs tangled on the leather couch. Mira arched beneath him, moaning his name loud and clear. Victor, not Elias, Victor, while he gripped her hips hard enough to bruise and growled, "Mine," against her throat. A collective gasp sucked every bit of air from the room. Someone screamed. A crystal flute slipped from a woman's hand and shattered on the marble like a gunshot. The sound cracked through the silence and set off a chain reaction. Glasses hitting the floor, chairs scraping, phones rising like periscopes. Mira's face drained of every drop of color, white as her gown. She grabbed Victor's arm so hard her nails left red crescents. "What the hell is this?" she hissed, voice shrill, cracking on the last word. Elias stumbled back a full step, mouth hanging open like a dead fish washed ashore, eyes darting from the screen to his father to the woman he thought was only his. Victor's champagne flute slipped from his fingers and exploded at his feet, champagne foaming over his polished shoes. And the screen kept rolling. The screen cut hard from the bedroom video to stark black background and white text, blown up so huge every word felt like a slap. First message, Mira to Noah, time-stamped 6 years ago. "Keep your mouth shut about me and Victor, or those photos go viral tonight. You think your little career survives when I scream rape to every aunt, every board member, every cop in Northmore?" Second message, Mira to Elias 3 months ago. "The family fund is ours the second Liora's gone. Keep your daddy happy, baby. I'll keep you warm." Heart emoji, kiss emoji. The words hung there, 30 feet tall, impossible to misread. Whispers exploded into shouts. "Is that real? a woman behind me gasped, clutching her pearls so hard the strands snapped, pearls bouncing across the marble like hail. "Oh my God, she blackmailed Noah?" someone else yelled. Phones shot up in every direction, red recording lights blinking like 1,000 evil eyes, live streaming every filthy secret to the entire state. The press row detonated. Reporters surged forward, mics thrusting toward the stage. "Miss Halden, care to comment on the blackmail allegations?" one shouted. "Mr. Arden, did you know your mistress was threatening your own nephew?" another barked. Cameras flashed white-hot. Someone near me was already narrating into their phone. "Live from the Arden Gala, folks. It's worse than we thought." Mira tried to cover her face with both hands, emerald flashing like a distress signal. Elias stared at the screen like the words were written in his own blood. Victor's mouth opened and closed, no sound coming out. The hall had turned into a screaming cage, and the bars were made of their own lies. Victor slammed his champagne flute down so hard the stem snapped, glass and champagne exploding across the stage. "Security! Kill the goddamn feed!" he roared, voice cracking like thunder for the first time in his life. But it was already too late. The Arden family was crumbling, right there under the chandeliers, in front of 2,000 wide eyes and 100 live streams. The screen didn't even pause. More messages rolled, relentless. Mira to a contractor, "Pay the extra inspection fee or your kid's school loses its new gym." Elias's digital signature glowing under forged share transfers. Then the worst. A full thread between Elias and Mira, hearts and dollar signs. Elias, 2:14 a.m. "Once she's out, we seize the fund. Split it 50-50 like we planned." Mira, "Victor gets his cut for looking the other way. Easy. He's already promised me the emerald. Forever." Elias spun on Mira, face purple, veins bulging. "You bitch, this is your fault," he screamed, loud enough for the balcony to hear. Mira's hand cracked across his cheek so hard the slap boomed through the hall speakers. "Don't you dare put this on me," she shrieked, emerald swinging wild. "You signed every paper." Victor lunged between them, face twisted purple-red. "Shut it down now," he bellowed at no one and everyone, grabbing for the podium like it could save him. Guests were on their feet, some bolting for the exits, heels clacking, chairs toppling. Others stood frozen, phones raised like torches, live streaming the whole disaster. The press row was pure frenzy. "Live from the Arden collapse," one reporter shouted into her mic, eyes shining with bloodlust. "Affair, fraud, blackmail. Northmore's first family exposed in real time." The perfect family portrait shattered into 1,000 ugly pieces, and every single shard had their name on it. I slipped through the screaming crowd like smoke, heart slamming against my ribs so hard I felt it in my throat, watching from the edge of the storm. My family, my betrayers, the people who smiled while they planned my grave, were unraveling thread by thread on that stage. Every lie ripping loose in front of the same 2,000 eyes they'd spent decades fooling. The Arden Empire was falling, and I hadn't even lit the match yet. I was just the wind that carried the flames. Report X hit the screen next. 12 projects, maps bleeding red. Faulty beams, crumbling foundations, bribe receipts with Mira's initials glowing like accusations. Huge white overlay text screamed across the wall. These buildings could kill thousands. The hospital I saved flashed up last. Victor's original mistakes circled in blood red. My fixes stamped over them like scars. The hall detonated. Glasses hit the floor in waves, crystal exploding. Chairs scraped back so hard, some toppled. Inspectors in the front row shot to their feet, faces carved from stone. "This is real?" one shouted, voice cutting through the panic. Phones were everywhere, live streaming the apocalypse to every corner of the state. Reporters shoved forward like wolves, mics thrusting toward the stage. "Mr. Arden, comment on the endangerment charges." "Miss Halden, did you bribe inspectors with family fund money?" "Elias, were you aware lives were at risk?" Elias lost it completely. Face purple, finger stabbing at Mira. "She trapped me. She made me sign everything." Mira wailed, mascara running black rivers, spinning toward Victor. It was all him. He promised me the lady position if I covered his messes. I was just following orders. Victor went corpse pale, veins bulging in his neck, screaming over the roar at security who were already frozen. Get them out! Shut this down! Shut it all down! His voice cracked on the last word, the sound of a king realizing the throne was already ash. But the Arden Council, those old uncles and aunts in the velvet VIP row, stood up as one. Faces carved from decades of blind loyalty finally cracked open. Uncle Reginald, 90 if he was a day, gripped his cane and boomed over the screaming, "Elias Arden, you are stripped of all titles, all positions, all inheritance, effective immediately. The family disowns you." His voice carried like a judge's gavel. Beatrice, Elias's mother, my mother-in-law, went dead white when the first bedroom clip had played. She clutched her chest, eyes locked on Victor and Mira tangled on that screen. And now she understood. Her husband, her precious son's mistress, same woman. She made this broken sound, half gasp, half sob, and crumpled straight to the marble floor in her pearls and navy silk. Someone screamed for a doctor. The family collapsed right there, in front of hundreds, secrets spilling like blood from a gut wound no one could stitch. Victor lunged for the microphone, face twisted purple with rage. This is a lie, a vicious setup by a jealous ex-wife. But the inspectors were already cutting through the crowd, badges flashing, warrants crisp in their hands. Victor Arden, Mira Halden, step away from the podium. You are under arrest for corruption, criminal endangerment, fraud, and bribery. Mira shrieked as cold steel snapped around her wrists, emeralds swinging wild. No, you can't! Victor, tell them! Victor shoved an officer hard, roaring, "Get your hands off me!" Elias dropped to his knees right on stage, sobbing like a child, snot and tears mixing on his tuxedo shirt. The press swarmed, lenses inches from their faces, live streaming every tear, every curse, every pathetic plea. Right as the second cuff clicked on Victor's wrist, one of the decorative marble columns, Victor's proud upgrade from last year, let out a deep, sickening crack that silenced the entire hall. Dust sifted from the ceiling like dirty snow. The sound rolled like thunder. Then the whole thing gave way, slow, graceful, deadly, crashing to the floor in an explosion of white powder and twisted rebar that looked like melted licorice. Screams erupted everywhere. The family's lies didn't just fall. They brought the house down with them. Right as the second cuff snapped shut on Victor's wrist, one of the tall marble columns, his proud restoration from last year, let out a deep, sickening groan that silenced every scream in the hall. Dust sifted down like dirty confetti, sparkling in the emergency lights. Then the whole thing cracked clean in half and crashed to the floor, rebar twisted like cheap licorice, exposed for every camera to see. Victor's own shoddy work collapsing the moment the truth hit it. People scattered, screaming, but I just stood there, watching the marble dust settle on his perfect tuxedo while cops dragged him away. Something inside me snapped loose. The chaos finally broke me free. The next morning, my phone rang before the sun was fully up. Zoe shoved it at me, eyes wide. "It's the mayor," I answered, voice still hoarse from the night. "Liora Arden." Mayor Reynolds sounded like she hadn't slept either. "Liora, after last night, God, the whole town saw it. We need you. Every dangerous structure Victor touched, every building on that list. We need you to lead the reconstruction. Northmore's at risk. Thousands of lives. Please." I sat on Zoe's sagging couch, cold coffee in my hand, staring at the cracked ceiling like it might fall too. The same woman who'd toasted Victor at every gala was begging me now. "I'll do it," I said, calm, clear, no tremor left. "But on my terms, my team, my standards, no shortcuts, no bribes, and my name stays on every fix." A long pause. then shaky. Yes, anything. Just save us. I hung up and looked at Zoe. They want me to clean up the mess I spent 10 years hiding. She grinned, fierce. Then make them pay you for it this time. I smiled back. Small, sharp, real. The tables had turned, and I was finally the one holding the hammer. 2 weeks later, the court slapped a seizure notice on Arden House like a death certificate. Yellow tape across the lobby doors, federal agents boxing files, every account frozen solid. The empire Victor bragged would last 5 more generations was gutted before breakfast. I walked into the boardroom that used to smell like his cigars and fear. Same long mahogany table where they voted me out. Now it was just me, Noah, and a judge's order in my hand. Noah stood beside me, shoulders square, eyes steady for the first time since I met him. "We rebuild," he said, voice low but sure. "Clean slate, no more rot, no more bribes, just honest concrete." I slid the new incorporation papers across the table and signed my name in bold black ink. Liora Arden, CEO. Then I crossed out Arden House and wrote above it in sharp strokes, Arden Reborn Studio. "No more shadows," I said, loud enough for the court reporter to hear. "No more lies hidden in load calculations." Noah took his pen, signed right under me as deputy director. He turned to the handful of staff we'd kept, the ones who hadn't run when the truth came out. "I vow we build honor this time," he told them, no shake in his voice. "Homes, not lies. Real foundations that hold when people stand on them." They nodded, some crying, some smiling like they'd been holding their breath for years. I looked around that room, sunlight pouring through the windows Victor always kept half shut, and felt the air move clean through my lungs. The old Northmore was gone, crumbled under its own weight the night the column fell. A new one was rising from the rubble, brick by brick, beam by beam, and for the first time in 10 years, I could breathe without tasting smoke. A month later, the rain came back, hard and cold, like Northmore itself wanted to remind me of that night. Zoe buzzed the intercom, voice flat. "Your ex is downstairs. Looks like a drowned rat." I walked to the door, barefoot, no hurry. Opened it just enough to see him. Elias stood on the mat, soaked through, expensive suit clinging to him like wet paper, eyes red and swollen, hair plastered to his forehead. Same rain that had drenched me when they locked me out. He looked smaller than I remembered. "Liora, please," he started before I could speak, voice cracking like cheap plaster. "Forgive me. I was weak, scared. Mira twisted everything, twisted me. I didn't know how far it went. Let me come home. We can fix this. We can still be us." He reached for my hand. I kept my arms crossed, felt nothing but a dull, distant pity, like watching a stranger cry on TV. "I forgive you, Elias," I said, quiet, steady, meaning every word. I really do. So I can live lighter, so I can walk through my days without dragging your weight on my back anymore. But forgiveness isn't a key. It doesn't open this door. Not for you. Not ever. His face crumpled, fresh tears mixing with the rain running down his cheeks. "But we were family," he sobbed, voice breaking into pieces. I looked at him one last time, saw the boy I married and the coward he became, and felt nothing tie me to either. "You never were," I said. I shut the door soft, one click. No deadbolts, no drama, just done. I leaned against it for a second, listening to him cry on the other side, then turned the lock anyway. Not to keep him out, to keep me in. The lock turned easy under my hand, smooth, final, like it had been waiting for me to mean it. Elias stayed out there sobbing for 10 full minutes, fists thumping weakly on the wood, voice cracking into the rain. I watched from Zoe's window, arms wrapped around myself, until his shoulders folded in and he shuffled away, head down, disappearing into the same storm that had once soaked me to the bone. Zoe came up behind me, set a steaming mug of tea on the sill. "You okay?" she asked, soft. I took the mug, felt the warmth sink into my palms. "Lighter," I said, and for the first time in years, I actually was. 3 months later, I bought the house back at auction. Court-ordered fire sale. Dirt cheap. I stood on that wide front porch where they'd left me with a suitcase, new key cold in my hand, bare feet on the same boards that once shook when the door slammed. Solid. Mine. First thing I did was drag a sledgehammer from the truck. That big oak door, the one Victor had sneered at, too modern for Arden blood, the same one they'd locked against me, I swung at it myself, hard. Wood exploded, splinters flying like confetti. Every hit echoed through the empty halls, chipping away a piece of them, a piece of the weight I'd carried. Sweat stung my eyes, arms burned, lungs raw, but I kept going until nothing was left but a pile of broken planks and 10 years of rage turned to dust. Noah showed up halfway through, took one look at me wild-eyed and grinning, and started hauling debris without a word. When the last chunk was gone, he wiped dust from his face and asked, "What now?" I unrolled fresh plans across the porch steps, sunlight catching on the crisp white paper. Wide glass panels, clean steel frame, light pouring in from every angle. "Rebuild it my way," I said, voice steady, sure. Open, strong, no shadows. No more hiding behind heavy doors. We worked straight through the weekend, sawdust in our hair, nails between our teeth, laughter mixing with hammer strikes. By Sunday, the new door stood gleaming, floor-to-ceiling glass framed in black steel, reflecting sky and trees, and me standing tall in the middle of it. I stepped through for the first time, sun warm on my face, breeze moving clean across the threshold. A declaration carved in every weld and pane. A home is only safe when you build it yourself. The old Northmore, with its poisoned traditions and crumbling facades, was finally buried under the weight of its own lies. A new one stood tall in its place. Clean lines, honest concrete, buildings that wouldn't kill the people sleeping inside them. I stood on my porch at sunset, glass door wide open, wind moving through the house like it belonged there. I whispered it to the empty street, to the sky turning gold, to every woman who'd ever been told to shrink. A house is only safe when we build it ourselves. And family is not always home. Zoe leaned in the doorway behind me, arms crossed, grinning. "You preaching now, boss?" "Somebody has to," I said, and laughed, real and loud, the sound bouncing off my new walls. If this story hit you in the chest the way it hit me telling it, if it made you cry or scream or finally feel seen, don't forget to follow. Hit that button, turn on notifications, share it with every sister, mother, daughter who's ever been told to be smaller. There are more secrets in Northmore, and I'm not done digging. But that night, standing in the house I rebuilt with my own hands, I thought the story was over. I thought every crack had been filled, every lie exposed. I didn't realize the Arden glass wall still had a hairline fracture I hadn't seen yet. Truth always wins, no matter how long it's been buried, but sometimes it takes its sweet time rising.